Hello, Envision crowd. Thanks for joining us. My name is Nate Peterson. This is Matt O'Reilly, and we're very excited to be here and a sponsor of the event. And we're excited to go over the Tintri overview with you guys. So first off, introductions. Again, this is Nate Peterson. I'm a sales manager at Tintri, and this is Matt O'Reilly, sales engineer.
Hey, everybody. Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
And for what we're going to go over today is a corporate overview, an overview of Tintri Intelligent Infrastructure, an overview of VMstore, an overview of IntelliFlash, the new H series, and then a QA. So just remember, you can ask questions throughout the presentation, and we'll answer them at the end. And the two best questions are going to get $50 gift cards sent out to them. So make sure you put your name, email, and we will make sure that we send out the gift card to the two best questions. So I know we're kind of in between you and the bar, but you've got two good questions are going to win something out there. All right, corporate overview. So Tintri and IntelliFlash are now part of DDN, Data Direct Networks. They're our parent company. They're the largest privately held storage company in the world, focused on artificial intelligence workloads and high performance compute workloads. They have over 10,000 customers, 1,000 employees, and do $400 million in revenue. And now Tintri VMstore and Tintri IntelliFlash are the enterprise offerings from DDN, all under the name Tintri now. We're coming off of our best quarter ever. Quarter 3 2020 was Tintri's best quarter. And we're going to do over $100 million in revenue in 2020, which will be our Tintri and IntelliFlash's combined best year ever. A little bit more about Tintri as the enterprise offering for Data Direct Networks. There's three branches. There's Tintri VMstore, IntelliFlash, and Nexenta. The VMstore is focused on NFS virtualized workloads. IntelliFlash is a very flexible storage solution, and Nexenta is software defined. And you're going to hear a little bit more from Matt on how we're integrating IntelliFlash and Nexenta. It's a broad portfolio. We can talk about many different workloads, very flexible. And excited to talk about those and hear your questions. Passing it on to Matt.
All right, thanks, Nate. Appreciate it. So kind of starting this out, and Tintri is all about intelligent infrastructure. And so what is that? Well, Gartner, talks about it here: optimized infrastructure resource for application consumption through the use of infrastructure, machine learning, and applying tuning as software overlays. So the intelligent infrastructure is something fairly new. Gartner is going to be coming out with a magic quadrant in that, and the Tintri products all fall into that. The artificial intelligence, machine learning gives a lot of intelligence about your infrastructure, and I'll talk about that as we go through the slide presentations here. So we really are looking forward to when that intelligent or the magic quadrant from Gartner comes out, because we're expected to be very far up and to the right. So why do you choose intelligent infrastructure? Because infrastructure is growing, but the number of people to manage it is not growing. It can really bridge the gap between the need for the resources and the experts available to manage all those resources. I'll give you a visual of that here coming up. With the artificial intelligence and the machine learning, there's a lot of self-service automation in the stack, and it empowers the IT experts to focus on activities that are more proactive than reactive, and ultimately saving the company money over time. And we have a lot of customers, thousands of customers, that have recognized all of this savings and the enhanced delivery and the less time you have to spend on your data storage, and some of them up to a very large number, up to 95% there. And so visually, you can see the x-axis here is the people and the budgets. The y-axis is the infrastructure, and the infrastructure is always going up and to the right. And the demand for the people to manage that is shrinking and shrinking. We've had a lot of discussions about that here here last night and throughout the day here today. It's just very hard to get very, technical people in the world today with the skill sets to manage it. There's some point solutions that you can do, role-based automation type things. You can build scripts to do things that save all kinds of time. There's a lot of other efficiencies you can build into your business and your workflows and that sort of thing that help you bridge that gap. But you're not typically going to get there all the way, and that's where the AI ops and intelligent infrastructure comes in. All of the equipment that you have, all of the software that you have that runs your equipment and whatnot, especially on the storage side, if you don't have to manage that as much, if the AI ops and the AI and the machine learning take care of that for you, this is where you really get the savings and you bridge that gap. So it's really something you can experience, and it's much, much different. I'll talk about all three of these products. The VMstore I'll spend some time on, and IntelliFlash I'll spend some time on. I know that there's a lot of current network center customers that are also the former Tagile, which DDN has purchased, as Nate kind of said. It's kind of rebranded to the IntelliFlash, or it's always been IntelliFlash, but it's all under the Tintri umbrella now. And then also NexentaStor. DDN owns NexentaStor, which was a software as a service type of a roll your own storage array, if you will. And we're combining the latter two together here, and I'll talk about that as well. So the VMstore overview, the approach or what we believe is one of the lead engineers, his name was Kieran Hardy of Tintri back in the day, was one of the founders of Tintri anyway, was a lead engineer at VMware, and he really understood that the storage part of VMware was a little bit wonky. So what the thought was is that you got to be able to manage at vDisks and not RAID levels, not LUNs or groups and that sort of thing. Manage the virtual, not the physical, and look at the application needs and not the infrastructure needs. So everything is managed more within VMware versus on at the storage layer itself. And to kind of illustrate that a little bit, you have your virtual machines on top, then you have physical switches, physical servers, all those sorts of things. And it's very easy to carve up virtual machines, whether it's in VMware or Hyper-V or XenServer or whatever it might be. And it's very easy to manipulate things within there as well, where you can add additional memory, additional CPU, additional vSwitches, all those sorts of things within VMware, very simply. But on the storage side of things, it was, and still is to a large extent, more difficult. It's not as integrated as it could be. And so things like carving up LUNs and mapping it up to the servers and those sorts of things aren't just really automatic. And sometimes the workloads need to be read-tuned or write-tuned or tuned for a mix of things, and that can make it somewhat difficult to manage. It takes a lot of time. There's large companies that have dozens of storage people that simply manage storage. And so what the Tintri went out to do was to make all of the data stores or the storage in your environment just like all other resources. So it's just as easy to manage your storage as it is your virtual machines. And that's really what the Tintri product is all about. It is designed for virtualization. We also have something called the quality of service. And so in a LUN or share world or in the block world, the typical way that storage is done today is that you may have a LUN on a system. There may be hundreds of virtual machines within that LUN. The LUNs are kind of a choke point for VMs or for any I/O really, where things queue up at the LUN level and whatnot, and so you need to make adjustments sometimes to do that. You need multiple LUNs for different applications and that sort of thing. It's really called an I/O blender effect. You might have a database and a file server in that same LUN, and the file server might be getting starved out by the database that's running a huge query throughout the day. what the Tintri VMstore does is it really separates all those virtual machines out, and you can see per VM everything. So all the I/O, all the megabytes per second, all the latency, everything is at a VM level. And that's very different, because when you look at those metrics, the I/O metrics and whatnot, on a traditional array, those are all at the LUN level and are more difficult to dig into to figure out which VMs are causing issues in the environment. You know, is it your databases, or is it a low-end server that you didn't think was doing anything that caused the issue? And we can dig into that really quickly, because you can see all of them at a per VM basis. The other cool thing that this allows you to do is to do things like snapshots. Snapshots today are pretty much table stakes. Most SAN vendors can do them. Some do them a little better than others, and some are more efficient than others. But on the Tintri VMstore, it's by VM versus by by LUN and the hundreds of VMs within the LUN. And so it really allows for granular control to recover from malware. We have a lot of customers that have been able to do that in a matter of just seconds. They figure out when the malware hit, they go back into the virtual machine that got infected, and they click restore, and they're back up and running within a matter of seconds. The snapshots are all pointer-based, so it's super fast to do that. And then the quality of service, the way that works, to go back to that a little bit, is you know, if you have that database, Oracle, SQL, whatever it is, just hammering the array, and you have a file server that needs to retrieve data, we can inject latency, if you will, or we could actually give it increase the queue depths on the virtual machine that's just going crazy, and so the other ones don't get starved out. We have a lot of different ways to handle that, but you know, just leaving it, there's tuning things that you can do, but generally we just leave it alone. So something that we've come out with here very recently is something we call SQL integrated storage, and it is with Microsoft SQL, and it allows you to do the same thing on a per database instance as you would on a virtual machine instance. So you typically have your standard storage, you have all of your databases or your VMs in a LUN, and you know, the VMstore can look at the individual virtual machines, or we can break it out. And then in a VM database server, you might have 100 databases, for example. And so what we can do is we pull that out as well, out of the virtual machine, and you can see your per VM statistics on each database. So you can tell again there which ones are the heavy hitters and which ones are doing all the work and whatnot. And so Tintri has traditionally been, you can only connect into hypervisors. You can connect into VMware to Hyper-V, to Rail, to Zen Server. There's a few others as well. But what SQL integrated storage does is you can still connect physical database servers. So if you have a Microsoft SQL database server that's not virtual, you can also do this from there, and you just connect the databases via the SMB protocol from the servers to the storage. And so this is like the only thing that we can do from a physical virtual server today. And this is Microsoft SQL. We have other things coming down the pipe that I'm sure we'll introduce here down the road. And so it is, you know, the overview here, it is very, very smart storage, like I talked about. It's purpose-built for, the file system was purpose-built for VMs, VM-level analytics across all the hypervisors, and you can automate everything. We have APIs and that sort of thing. And no LUNs, we track everything I/O at the VM and the vDisk, auto-tuned QoS. Like I said, it's auto-tuned, and that's typically where we leave it. We can set a minimum and maximum IOPS and that sort of thing on virtual machines, but generally we don't have to, just because the software is smart enough to not have to do that manual intervention. And it really allows you to isolate things from other noisy neighbors that would, you can do that very easily versus it taking a long time in the traditional storage world. So it's really per VM everything. And so some of the differentiators, I talked about this a lot, but the predictive performance, the dynamic QoS, and being able to automatically, make sure that the system is running optimally. The visibility, this is really killer. If you pull up our user interface, or our single pane of glass called TGC, Tintri Global Center, where you can manage, dozens of arrays, all with one single pane of glass. You can just pull up one chart, and it shows, or not a chart, a table, if you will, that has all the metrics across it, and latency is being one of the metrics, because performance is all about latency. And you can sort the latency from highest to lowest and whatnot, and you can just mouse over the latency number, and it'll pop up the values. And so it's really more, it's a lot more visibility into the latency than any other storage array, because we can tell if the latency is from the host, if we can tell it's from the network, or we can tell if it's on the storage itself and what aspect of the storage. There's the flash, there's the spinning drives in our older hybrid systems, and then there's also mirroring, and we can also throttle a VM as well. So all those things pop up, and it gives you a really good view as to who the bad actor is, who's the offender, and why. So a very, very robust intelligence built into that, and we have a lot of customer examples. In fact, we were working with one the other day where they moved to a new platform, different server platform. Everything was running fine, or they needed to upgrade, but everything was running good, no latency on their existing platform. They moved to a newer platform, and they were seeing a lot of host latency as well as network latency, and it was across the board. And so it turned out it was pretty easy to troubleshoot. It wasn't an issue on the storage because it was already working on a different platform. But it turned out there was a bad driver or a down rev driver on the server platform, and they were able to fix that really quick. So those sorts of examples are, we have tons of those. And then it's really about the accelerated productivity. With all the intelligence built into the platform and the machine learning and all of those sorts of things, we can speed up developers, for example. If developers need a whole bunch of virtual machines to test something, they can do that in just a matter of seconds. If you need to recover from malware or something like that pretty quickly, you can do that. That's a whole different subject, malware, but it is something that you can do if the malware hasn't spread into and hasn't been hanging around for a long time. And you can easily accommodate data growth. We have a really cool Tintri Analytics portal that will show you visually what it's going to look like and predict about 18 months into the future what your data usage rates are going to be from a capacity and performance standpoint. And this is very handy when we're working with our customers to do upgrades, because we can look at the timeline going forward. Here's today, and then if we go forward, we can see what it's going to look. If we drop in a new Tintri VMstore node, we can see what the graphs are going to do from a latency or from a I/O and capacity standpoint. And then you can set the date that you want to add those nodes to it, and then gives a very good visual of what it's going to look like going forward. So it helps you with your capacity planning going forward. Our customers really like to see that, because it's very hard to predict what your capacity needs are going to be going forward, and we can do that very easily on a very granular basis. So So that's really the Tintri overview that I really like to give. Happy to answer any questions at the end here, but go ahead and ask them in the chat. So now I'll talk about the IntelliFlash overview. So the IntelliFlash was it originated. It was the old Tagile product. The Tagile name has kind of gone away, or really has gone away, but I just want to reference that because I know there's a lot of Network Center and Tagile customers, and I bet that's where I started. I started at Tagile in 2013. And so I'll give that overview here now, and there's some pretty exciting things going on here I'll show you at the end. But this is, the tagline is run every workload at the speed of memory. The system is designed to keep the most active data in the fastest part of the array, and that being the DRAM, the NVDIMM, and the SSD. We do have all flash and hybrid systems, and if it's an all flash system, we have very dense SSDs where the data will live, and if it's a hybrid system, we have very dense hard drives where the data will live there. And you get just super extreme performance with the system, as well as a lot of features and functionality that I have here. We do out of the gate thin provisioning, compression and dedupe, and snapshots and clones and those sorts of things, and replication. And metadata acceleration is some things that we have some patents around it. Basically, how we handle the data about the data, or the metadata. So we have some patents around it and how we do that. And that really enabled all the snapshots and clones. And we've been doing this since day one. In a lot of ways, this is a lot of vendors have these things now, but it took them a long time to catch up, and we've only been honing our skills on these and making things even more efficient as we over the years. Encryption, HA, and multi-protocol access, and the per VM management. So we do support Fiber Channel and iSCSI for a block protocol, the protocol from your switches to your storage. We also support NFS and SMB. And so the NFS and SMB, that is what the Tintri VMstore product uses. We do that as well, and we can see some level of individual per VM management, but it isn't nearly as good as the management on the VMstore side of things. But it is still very, very good. The Tintri VMstore product just works with virtualization. You have to have a hypervisor, except for the SQL integrated storage, but that's very specific. It just works with a hypervisor. The IntelliFlash is more flexible in that it can work, it can connect directly to any server and serve up LUNs or shares. And it can do the versus multi-protocols, and we got a new protocol coming out here, and I'll talk to at the end of the slideshow here. And so we also have very good predictive analytics in the cloud with our IntelliCare platform. So this platform is the phone home. We phone home all of our data, once a day to the IntelliFlash, IntelliCare platform, and you can see the predictive analytics in that, the capacity and the performance information. All the array telemetry you can view that on the array itself. You can get a much longer view on the system with IntelliCare. And the Tintri VMstore analytics, it's kind of the same thing. And so what we're doing is we're combining these two things together in a product called SIA, or SIA. So that will be coming out within the next year, I believe. But it's going to be merging these two things together, so we'll get even more analytics on the VMstore and the IntelliFlash platforms together. So we're really looking forward to that. But IntelliCare is world-class. Is world-class analytics. We use it all the time in my job, just to help customers through capacity and expansions and all those sorts of things. We can see exactly what's going on. So from a product standpoint, with the IntelliFlash platform, we have the N series, which is our NVMe array. We have our HD series and our T series. The N series is NVMe drives versus SAS drives. The HD series has SAS SSD drives in it. It's all flash. The NVMe is NVMe drives, which are all flash as well. The difference is the I/O connector that's on the drives and how it connects into the array, the innards of the array, if you will. In the SAS world, it is SAS is serial attached SCSI, so the data has to move through a chip on the motherboard, and all the commands are kind of serial. It's still very, very fast, but the N series with NVMe, the connector on there connects directly to the PCIe bus and does not have to go through that chip. And so it's a lot more parallel I/O, and so the latency is a lot lower. We have a lot of customers that have, we typically see 0.2 milliseconds worth of latency on the N series array. The HD series, or the all flash arrays, or an all flash pool in our environment is about, we always typically we see less than 1 millisecond of latency on average, but if you think about the differences there, 0.2 milliseconds to 1 millisecond is a 5x difference, and so that is a huge increase in performance, and we have a lot of customers that are getting the advantages of that. And we also have our T series, which is you can run both all flash and hybrid pools in a T series at the same time. And so some differentiators there I talked about is the consistent low latency, very high IOPS, very low latency for that, whatever it is, online trading type application that needs super low latency, and you got to get that trade done super fast. We can do that with the NVMe platform. The global insights with the IntelliCare, soon to be SIA, and then we have it's a more flexible architecture than the VMstore, but that, if your environment is all virtualized, we typically probably tend to lead towards the VMstore, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with the IntelliFlash as well, because you can attach direct servers to it. You can attach the different protocols, the block or file, as well as we can do file-based services on the array as well, where we can do the SMB, and I'll talk about that here in a minute as well. So this is where we'll talk about NexentaStor a little bit. So it's really the best of both worlds coming together. So a little bit about NexentaStor. It was, like I said, a roll your own type of an array where you could put it on your own hardware. You could create LUNs and shares and whatnot on it. It supported fiber channelized SCSI, NFS, and SMB CIFS, and it would allow you to do that on your own hardware, like I said, and you could add expansions to it, or on your own supported hardware, that is. There was some advantages to it. They did compare and contrast. The IntelliFlash was able to do compression and dedupe and all those capabilities that I showed you earlier, compression, dedupe, and the snapshots and all that sort of thing, and we're very, very good with performance. NexentaStor, did a very good job from being very flexible and being able to install on anything, but they weren't known for performance. I don't believe they have any real compression or dedupe to speak of either, or that worked extremely well. And the underpinnings of both of those are very, very similar. They're both based off of ZFS as the file system and volume manager. And so what we've been doing over the last year is combining those two things together, the two products together. And we're getting the best of both worlds. So we're going to have a very robust file serving capabilities, very performant system, and we're also adding some things that NexentaStor has, like an S3 interface, so that'll be another protocol that we use as a front end. You'll be able to connect into the system via S3 as a place to store bulk data, if you will, a place to keep data that you haven't, you don't access that long or whatever. Amazon S3 and Glacier and whatnot are kind of the standard for that. This is going to be local on-prem. You'd probably get a lot better performance than having to go over the internet for that if you so desired. So like backup applications or whatnot could easily go on that. We're also making a CSI driver for Kubernetes. So for some of the object storage containers type stuff, you'll be able to attach to the new IntelliFlash array with that as well. And it's not, and so the 3.11 release that's available now with IntelliFlash has some of these capabilities combined, and it's mainly on the SMB and NFS side of things. But the 4.0 product, hopefully being out in the first quarter here, or coming up in the first quarter, will combine all of these capabilities together. There's one other thing, the VSA virtual storage appliance. So the plan is to be able to have the IntelliFlash run as a virtual machine in an environment now is also something that we're going to do. That's not going to be with the 4.0 release when that comes out in the first quarter. It'll be after that, but we'll be sure to keep everyone up to date on that as we go. So really looking forward to that. There's a lot of really good things coming together with the Nexenta engineers and the IntelliFlash engineers, combined together, working as one to get this product out. And so with that, we also have some new hardware coming out. We have some new H series, and this new H6100 and an H6200. The 6100 isn't quite out yet. Don't have a date on that, but the 6200 is, and that's the 6100's bigger brother, more capacity and bigger shells and that sort of thing. The 6100 the controller is based off of what DDN uses as their hardware for their high performance compute environments. And I didn't mention it, but the Tintri VMstore product is also switching out their hardware with the T7, or not switching it out. The new T7000 that's coming out is going to be also on DDN hardware. So all the platforms are coming together and going to be running on the same platform. And it's a really great platform. It's Athena based. It has 24 SSD slots, 24 slots in the front, all NVMe. There's tons of CPU and tons of memory and NVDIMMs, and we can support up to 100 gig Ethernet on this one now as well. And it's a 12 gigabit per second backplane with the for the SAS connections. And it is all in that 2 rack units. You can see the front and the rear there. And there's going to be expansion shelves with this. There's going to be a 24 bay expansion shelves with using 4, 8, or 14 terabyte hard drives. So it'll go from 96 terabytes all the way up to a petabyte with up to the 4 expansion shelves on it. So it's going to start at about that 96 terabyte range, but it's going to have a lot of SSDs in the front as used as cache, so you'll still get very, very good performance out of it. And what we've released already is our 6200, and this is a bigger version of it. You can see the capacities, the CPU and the memory available there, and it's very similar. It's the same type of chassis, and this one is actually going to have a 96 bay expansion shelf, and so you can go capacity from about 720 terabytes up to 8 petabytes with the 18 terabyte hard drive. So we used to, in the IntelliFlash world, we just had a max of 4 terabyte hard drives. Now it's going up to that 18 terabyte hard drives, and so you can set it with the controller with half and fully populated options as well. So we're really looking forward to what we have coming with the new IntelliFlash capabilities, together with NexentaStor and together with the new hardware that we have coming out as available. So with that concludes the presentation. Were there any questions? Okay, my eyes aren't good enough to read that here.
All right, we've got some questions. From Dan, we've experienced issues where one machine writing to disk on our current Tagile SAN houses all our VMs. They become nearly unresponsive until the activity slows down. What do newer Tintri systems do to better throttle reads writes so that one machine can't take down the array?
Yeah, so Dan, I'm not sure which array you have there. I mean, it could be, or how long you've had it installed. It could be that it's a hybrid type of an array, where there may be just too many IOs going on in the array. And there's a lot more technologies where you can upgrade to some SSD or add a SSD shelf to the system. It kind of depends on the system, but we can certainly take that offline, Dan, if you like. We can talk about that in more detail.
Yeah, it sounds like better performance would help there, so an all-flash array potentially, but we'd have to look at what you're currently running. Next question, what kind of performance effect can we expect from enabling compression and or encryption? Also, are simultaneous compression and encryption supported?
So yes, so depending on your array, the T3000 series arrays, so there's a T3000, the 4000, as well as the HD arrays, all support encryption. The HA series arrays did not have one, although those are all end of sale, or end of life, end of support life, so those wouldn't apply. But you can, the performance, all the numbers that I have given, for a hybrid pool, I typically say that you get less than sub 5 milliseconds of latency, as you're running. If you have a huge backup job just chewing through data that's all coming from the spinning drives, you're going to see increased latencies, of course, but usually that's at night when there's no other activity going on. But certainly, yeah, you can. The encryption actually doesn't take up any extra cycles at all. It's all just done on the disk, and there's just keys, and so there's no performance hit at all. The data runs through the encryption chips, whether the data is the encryption is turned on or off. And so really, we've said for a long time that there's no performance hit with compression and or dedupe.
All right, looks like last question potentially. Have there been any improvements to metadata handling?
Yeah, so again, Dan, I think we'll have to have a different conversation or a conversation about this, but because it sounds like you may have experienced some issues, but we can talk about that. The latest code versions improve a lot of that, but we can talk about that further.
Cool. Are there any more questions through there? No. Cool. Well, thanks for the questions. In closing, under DDN, we've got Tintri IntelliFlash, Tintri VMstore, and the combination of the IntelliFlash and Nexenta. If there's any questions you'd like to take offline, Matt and my information will be available. We'd like to understand your guys' workloads and see where we can add value. And again, thank you for your time and thanks for allowing us to be a sponsor here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.